We've consistently proposed long-term partnerships, while America has often pursued short-term transactions. The gap between partnership and competitor, unfortunately, has remained too wide in recent days. So last evening, I instructed our negotiators to return to Ottawa. We cannot accept what they've offered, and we will not give what they've asked.
All right, great, because we didn't have any other problems. Donald Trump has decided to start a full-blown trade war with Canada. I mean, it is seismic, the size of this trade war. And what do we always ask for? Maximalist demands, as if we have all the leverage in the world. When is it gonna get through Trump's super thick head? We don't have the leverage you think we do. Not everybody's going to cow to you and bow to you. So now this is going to be an epic disaster, and it has gotten instantly ugly. Anna has the whole story.
It certainly has gotten instantly ugly. And as I give you the details of this story, I want you all to consider the fact that energy experts predict that we will run out of our strategic petroleum reserves by September 1st. Which is right around the corner.
That is unreal, man.
And that is a relevant thing to keep in mind because we rely on Canada, believe it or not, for a great deal of our energy imports. And I'm gonna give you those numbers in just a minute. But first, let's rewind. Let's give you some context on how we got to where we are today. So just last week, the United States and Canada were attempting to negotiate a new trade deal, which blows my mind because if you guys can recall, one of the things that Trump did in his first term was completely renegotiate NAFTA and created a new North American trade agreement known as the USMCA. Then he gets elected for his second term and he's like, not good enough. Not good enough, I never keep my promises, so I wanna renegotiate. Okay, so thus we find ourselves in a new trade war with one of our closest trade partners, Canada. So President Donald Trump had threatened to place a 50% tariff on $20 billion worth of Canadian imports. Now that's stupid for a number of reasons, but the main reason is the fact that, for reference, Canada usually exports about $400 billion worth of goods to the United States every year, and one of the main goods is oil and natural gas. So the goods impacted by these new tariffs would not, of course, impact oil or natural gas. Like Trump doesn't want to mess with that, but Canada could mess with that. Now, because they have leverage over us in that regard. Now, the goods impacted by the new tariffs include hockey equipment, beer, cement. You should also keep in mind that we import crude oil, natural gas, passenger cars, auto parts, and industrial machinery from Canada. So these negotiations were intended to find a workaround to these new tariffs that Trump was proposing, but these negotiations failed. The Canadians have had enough. Both the United States and Canadian governments have accused each other of introducing poison pills in the last second. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who you heard from in the very beginning of this segment, has stated that he will in fact retaliate against the United States by matching the tariffs dollar for dollar. Here's more from Carney, take a look.
We recognized from the start that America has changed. Early last year in this room, I observed that the decades-long process of steadily increasing integration between our economies was over. Our government understood before many that America would transform all of its commercial relationships, that it would put a series of tariffs on its closest allies and use economic integration as a weapon. Last spring, I warned that America is trying to break us so they can own us. And I promised that that will never, ever happen. We are keeping that promise. Canada is becoming stronger and less dependent on America. We are already giving ourselves more than they can take away. And we are just getting started.
Now, in response to this, like a complete toddler, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, vowed to increase even more tariffs on Canadian goods. So on January 1st, 2027, tariffs on all cars, trucks, both large and small, automotive parts and steel will be increased to 50%. Build in the United States and there are zero tariffs. Canada will be treated like a state no longer on trade and in other ways also. They are among the worst nations in the world to deal with.
Come on, man.
They feel entitled, and yet we don't need Canada, they need us.
Wouldn't it be amazing if you wrote this about Israel?
Okay. Oh my God, I mean, that would actually be true.
Exactly.
Right, but in the case of Canada, it's not true, okay? Canada is the single largest supplier of energy imports for the United States, providing roughly 60% of imported crude oil and other and 90% of imported natural gas. So you might be wondering, like, but aren't we like the top producer of oil here in the United States? We are. We're also the top exporter of oil. And there's different types of oil. Our refineries are only able to refine Canadian oil, okay, Canadian crude. So this is the reason why we export a lot of our oil. Also, let's keep it real, the oil companies want to make a killing and they're gonna sell to the highest bidder. But in this case, to say that we don't need Canada is laughable to say the least.
Yeah. So our oil is not our oil, it's ExxonMobil's oil. They keep calling it our oil or energy independence. That's such a giant lie by mainstream media to trick you into thinking that, oh, when we drill, baby, drill, that's not for ExxonMobil's benefit, that's for your benefit. No, it's not. It is our oil once it's in the ground. Once we do the drill, baby, drill, it's now ExxonMobil and Chevron's oil, and they can sell it anywhere they want, and they do. So it gives us no energy independence at all. That's why we have to import so much oil and gas from Canada, because they make a bigger money by selling it outside the country than they do selling it inside the country. So that's why we're dependent on Canada. And our relationship with Canada until Trump has been excellent. They actually are a special ally, and they actually give us things in return for what we give them, and we have a mutually beneficial relationship. The country that feels entitled to everything we have and gives us nothing back is Israel. But Israel can't be touched, so what we've done is we've started a war for Israel and Iran, but now today, as we're starting this war, trade war against Canada, Scott Bessent announced that we might take other countries off the dollar and start a massive global economic meltdown and a warfare against the rest of the planet. It's because you know who does business with Iran right now? China, India, Russia, Brazil, Indonesia. And by the way, Bessent kept talking about like allies of ours better not do anything with Iran, otherwise they're gonna cut you off. Well, wait, what allies is he talking about? Because China and Russia aren't allies. Are you talking about, these are other parts of countries in BRICS, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt. So are we now going to say, hey, we were protecting you with our bases there? Just kidding. Not only did we not protect you, we sent all our defensive missiles to Israel and you got bombed anyway. But on top of that, now we're gonna kick you out of any kind of economic alliance because Israel has demanded that we go thermonuclear economic warfare against the planet in order to hurt Iran because they need to be a regional superpower, Israel does. So I tell you all that in this context because on top of potentially starting a war with the rest of the world economically, we take our strongest ally, the ones we have most connections to, Canada, and we punch them in the face worse than we punch anyone else. And it's insanity, total insanity.
I'm not even done yet. So I should note, even before the latest threats by Trump, he had already set automobile tariffs at 25%, and tariffs on Canadian steel are already set to 50%, okay? But if you thought Trump was playing hardball, then just wait until you hear from the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, who's quoted as saying the following: Trump underestimates Canada, we're all in. Up here, we're at a fever pitch. Everyone's in for an economic war. They know they're going to have to sacrifice. In fact, many Canadians have been boycotting the United States. They're not traveling here as tourists, they're not buying American products. This is immediately after Trump got elected for his second term and started, of course, issuing all sorts of threats against Canada. Ford, by the way, is threatening to completely revoke US access to minerals that the Pentagon needs for military equipment and electronics. He says, I'll cut them off. You don't get a grain of sand out of Ontario. Ford also threatened to cut off electricity imports from Canada, going back to what I was referencing earlier in regard to how much we actually are reliant to Canada when it comes to our energy needs. He says lots of bluster. Oh, and then Trump responded to it by saying lots of bluster from Doug Ford, who is the premier of the Canadian province of Ontario, but who is better known as the less charismatic, intelligent, and overall unimpressive brother of the late, great Rob Ford. America has been carrying Canada for decades, but no longer. The United States will always be far bigger, richer, and stronger than Canada. Let me just remind you all, we're $40 trillion in debt, and the bond yield for the 30-year bond is increasing because of our insane amount of debt. But anyway, without the United States, Canada could survive. It's where they get all of their money, and because of their current bad leadership, primarily Carney and his flunky Ford, they will not be allowed to keep taking advantage of the US, their key to survival. Now, he also went on to claim that much of the electricity, oil, and gas that Canada receives is transported through the United States. That's not true. In reality, the vast majority of Canada's energy exports go to the United States. As I mentioned earlier, we receive 60% of imported crude from Canada, 90% of imported natural gas. Canada is an energy producer that mostly exports rather than imports energy. And Canada's threat should be taken seriously, okay? During an earlier phase of the dispute, Ontario imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exported to Michigan, Minnesota, and New York. And here's what Ford also said: we power 1.5 million homes and businesses. Everything's on the table. I'll do whatever it takes. If Trump continues trying to dismantle Canadian manufacturing, Ford said, he better have a pack of batteries. So we're already dealing with an inflationary environment for a number of reasons. But one of the main reasons is this disastrous war that we have entered against Iran at the behest of the Israelis. And then to make matters worse, Trump is doubling down on the most moronic trade wars you can imagine. But don't worry, a reality show plastic surgeon, okay, her name is Dr. Sheila Nazarian, told Mark Levin, it's okay, I'm willing to absorb higher costs as long as Israel gets what it wants. Take a look.
For me as an Iranian, a person of Iranian descent, my appetite is quite high for high gas prices and for higher prices of goods because for me it's a humanitarian issue. They killed tens of thousands of Iranians, unarmed protesters in the streets in January.
She hasn't spared a single word in regard to the innocent civilians in Iran who have been, slaughtered by US and Israeli bombs in this stupid, disastrous war, including all those little girls who were killed in Manab in the opening salvo of the war on February 28th.
Yeah, so first of all, she says as an Iranian, no, she is an advocate for Israel, doesn't care about Iran at all, okay? But even if she did, as an Iranian, I don't mind paying higher gas prices. Well, sister, that's on you, man. As an American, I mind paying higher gas prices, whether that's for Israel or Iran. That's not my business. My business is America. And I mind greatly paying higher gas prices. So Israel, as she admitted later in the segment, so that Israel can become a global superpower. I can't believe they're just saying it now.
She's a traitor to the country.
Yeah, of course she's a traitor. Of course she is. And then they go, oh, that's a trope. No. It's not a trope when you say it out loud. When you say, yeah, America should suffer for Israel so that Israel can be a regional and global superpower. I didn't say, you said it. So you can kiss my ass with all of your, oh, everybody's an anti-Semite, oh, everybody's a trope, doing a trope. Shut up, no one cares anymore. You guys can all go in your Washington and New York and be like, right, all Americans are anti-Semites, right? We should hate Americans. We should tell everybody that Americans are disgusting anti-Semites and we should criticize all of them until they suffer and they gotta pay higher prices for Israel. The stupid anti-Semites, let's punish them, right? That's what you're saying, and we're sick of it, okay? We're sick of a bunch of Israelis all over television telling us, go to war, go pay more, do this. And now on top of it, look, we have a perfect storm, guys. We have a pure evil government of Israel with 100% control over our foreign policy going, attack more war, more genocide, give me money, give me wars, give me caskets of Americans coming home. Okay, because we're not going to use Israeli troops. We're gonna let American troops die for us. And now on top of that, you have a moronic man-child president who's like kind of mentally challenged, going, oh, tariffs are the right answer. Really? 50% tariffs on our closest ally as you're declaring economic war on the rest of the world? That's good to our benefit? That's gonna help us? No, you guys, one of the things that's most underestimated is not Donald Trump's corruption. Everybody knows Donald Trump's corruption. That he's now a servant of Israel is obvious to literally everyone in the country other than people on television. They're like, oh, Israel, they have no influence at all. Don't fire me. Don't fire me, Zionists. Please, please don't fire me. We all know it, guys. It doesn't matter what you bunch of liars say. So now, the underrated part is how deeply unintelligent he is. He doesn't understand that if for a tariff to work, it has to be targeted, it has to be proportional, and it has to go over the long term, okay? A tariff that is gigantic, aimed at our closest trading partner, and is not long term because we all know you're gonna taco, right? Oh, 50% tariff, oh, I mean 0. 120%, I mean 10%. 200%, I mean 5%. I mean, what kind of a lunatic do we have as president? Such an absurd, pathetic moron. So it's not gonna work. Work how? What has that tariff done to help us? All it's done is increase gas prices. And then on top of the demands of Israel for infinite, endless wars, they're going to pulverize this economy. So there's nothing but bad news ahead because we have a mentally challenged president being ruled by a purely evil leader in Benjamin Netanyahu. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.